some really neat birds in their backyard today. Thanks for coming back and joining us for a little bit more of our digital EcoCarnival. My name is Alison Branco. I'm the president of the board of directors of the Seatuck Environmental Association, and I'm here at the South Shore Nature Center. This is one of the 2 properties in the town of Islip that Seatuck manages, and it's on Bayview Avenue in East Islip. And although our nature center is closed right now, the property is still open for walks. You'll see we've added some one-way signs on the loop trail to try to keep everybody safe. So we're closed today to keep our staff safe and do maintenance.
No sound.
There's no sound? What? None? 0? Right here. Okay. How about now? Can you hear me now? How do you know there's no sound?
Because someone texted no sound.
So we're here today at the South Shore Nature Center on Bayview Avenue in East Islip, and we're going to do a pond exploration today. So this is the pond behind us. This is a freshwater body. It's actually a man-made impoundment, so that means a dam has been placed in a creek to make the water pond up here. And this is very common all across Long Island. Many, many, many creeks, hundreds of them all along the South Shore, are impounded this way. And so what happens is all of the water from the landscape drains some overland and a lot of it underground through our groundwater and comes down through these creeks. Sometimes it slows down in these impoundments, gets ponded up, and then it eventually drains south all the way out into Great South Bay. And the important thing to know about that is that that means everything we do on the land is impacting the water quality in Great South Bay where we like to swim and fish. So everything we put on our lawn, everything we put down the drain, every dog poop we don't clean up, all winds up in the bay. So it's important to always remember that whenever we're doing anything on the landscape, that we're also impacting our water on Long Island. So like I said, this is a freshwater pond, and today we're going to take this dip net. This is just a big net on a big long pole. We're going to dip in here and we're going to try to see if we can find any interesting critters in the pond. You'll see I'm wearing waders, so these are sort of rubbery pants with boots attached, and these help keep me dry and warm and also protect me from the snapping turtle that lives in here. Hopefully he won't be paying us a visit today. And I do have a lovely assistant over here, Claire, who's going to help me with our dip a little bit as well. So let's go. Let's get dipping and see what we can find. We're going to walk down here, sort of a little bit more under the trees, where things are a little bit quieter and we might have a better chance of finding something. First we're going to try and dip some in the water. I'm going to very carefully get into here. Whenever you go into a pond, you always want to make sure that it's safe. A lot of ponds like this have a very ooey gooey bottom and you would never want to step in those. So you can poke something in, and then you always want to step very carefully. But we know that way. Find anything in here. So this is a scoop in the water column, so we can see if we can find any bugs or fish in the water. Give me a bin, Claire, and bring it over here. I'm not sure if we found anything today, but don't worry, we found a couple fish earlier. Show to you. Tip our net inside out and shake it around in this water in the bin here and see if we found anything. Can you aim the camera down into the bin? So there's a lot of leaves. Try not to scare anything while I do this. Look, got a little stuck in the mud. So you want to help me there? It's going to help me see if we found anything in here. Always check the net too, because some things like to hold on to that mesh. See anything on the mesh? And then we'll comb through these leaves and see if we can find any bugs swimming. There's a lot of larvae of things like dragonflies often in this pond. Elsa, could you bring over the jars that have things already in them? We have the whole family helping out today. So we're going to just look through all these things and see what we can find. Hopefully once we get all these leaves out, we'll be able to see more. But we have to make sure we don't miss anything that's hiding in the leaves. So if you look in here, when we did a scoop earlier, we found a couple of fish. Can you see that right there? See that fish right there? Those are mosquito fish, we call them. Gambusia. And they love to live in ponds and they eat the larvae of mosquitoes. Oh, what is that goose doing? Lots of interesting things happen in this pond all the time. There's a goose out there rinsing himself off a little bit, it looks like. All right, Claire, I don't know if we found anything in here. What do you think?
Nope.
Yeah, all the swimming bugs. It's been a little bit cold the last few days. Oh, I found a tadpole. Can you zoom in on that? Can you see it well enough?
Yes, sure. I can't really see. Oh, there we go.
Let's see if I can make it swim. There he goes. I'll try and catch him and put him in our little fish viewer. Here we go. So that's a tadpole. Tadpoles are the baby version of frogs. So that little guy eventually will grow some legs and his gills will come in and his face will start to look like a frog and his tail will disappear and then he'll be a frog. We have mostly bullfrogs and maybe a few green frogs here in this pond. It's a little hard to tell in that little tadpole which kind it is, but that guy will be a frog someday. And another thing you can see in here that you might have seen when looking at the tadpole is this little guy here. Is it easier to see with my hand behind it? I think, it's so small I can't quite tell. I think that's a water boatman. There are two bugs that look sort of similar to that, water boatmen and back swimmers. And if you get a good look at them, you can tell, especially if they're near the surface, which one they are, because the back swimmers, you can see their legs up in the air as they swim on their back. But they both have these long legs and they can sometimes get around on the top of the water. And there are probably lots of them in here that we're not seeing. You want to do a new scoop for me, Claire? See what we can find? Oh, sorry. Won't help if I sit on the net. Always be careful of a big long pole. Just remember, don't go too far because you have short boots on. Pour this out slowly and see if, make sure we don't miss anything in here. Another thing we found a bunch of when we did a grab earlier a little bit deeper is some clams. There's a little freshwater clam, they call it a fingernail clam, and we found quite a few of those in here. And apparently those are a new addition to this pond in the last couple of years. So it's hard to know where they came from, but a lot of times when something new comes into a pond, it comes from a bird or a goose or something like that that has been traveling around from one water body to another and brings things with it. Could also be from people, but in a pond at a park like this, it's probably more likely from a bird.
Anne Marie is asking, how did those clams get there?
Oh, I just answered that question, I think.
And someone was also asking, what does that look like, a fingernail clam?
Oh, I'm gonna go get it and show it to you in just a minute. I have them over here. Claire. Oh, no, you don't have anything yet? Let's go over here and find those fingernail clams to look at. Do you have them over here? Are they in this one? I'm gonna have to find some more. Do I have any in here? Oh, I must have dumped them out with that last thing. They kind of look like a fingernail. We're gonna have to find some. I'll get some more. They were down deep in the muck. I'm wondering if we can show people this little water boatman bug that's in this jar, because it might be easier to see, especially if I put something white behind it. Can you see that swimming in there? See him swim around? He's very fast and he's trying to stick to the sides, it looks like. So there are lots of those little critters in there. It's sort of like a beetle that lives in the water. And there's several different kinds in ponds like this. Could be a diving beetle too, actually. It's very small, it's hard to tell. All right, let's go see what else we can find in our net. Girls, did you find anything good in there? All right, we've got a clam to show everyone. Oh, a big one? Oh, perfect.
Claire, go get that piece of white paper for
Right on the
backdrop.
leaf, though. So there's one of those fingernail clams. It's very small, and they can get a little bit bigger, like the size of your whole fingernail. Can you see that, everybody? So that's what those clams look like. They're usually sort of whitish, kind of like the color of your fingernail, a little yellow, but mostly whitish. And these, we're finding a lot of them stuck all in the leaf litter at the bottom of this pond. And I know that they find bigger ones sometimes. So that's what those fingernail clams look like. Maybe we can take another look at this fish. Hello, buddy. Be very gentle with our fish viewer. That's a little bit broken. We have 3 in here now. Oh, 4.
I suggest putting that,
Putting it by the white.
yeah, that white background.
That helps see the fish and the tadpole swim. So you can see how that tadpole swims, mostly with his tail flopping back and forth. And those things that kind of look like chubby cheeks, that's where his gills are. And then we have 1, 2, 3 of these mosquito fish. And one thing that's really important whenever you catch animals is to always be sure to put them back and not to keep them in a small container too long, because they're breathing oxygen out of this water and they'll use it up pretty fast. Okay, this swimming bug is moving really good right now. Can you get a look at him? Is my blue shirt enough of a background? He's right at the top. Let's see if we can make him swim again. Go, buddy.
Mary is asking if the beetles eat plants.
The beetles, most beetles in a pond like this eat what we call detritus. So that is sort of like the breakdown products of all the plants. So as you saw, there's a lot of leaf litter in this pond. So that's all the leaves that fell down during the fall. They're inside the pond and they're getting broken down in the muck in the bottom of the pond. And there's all this sort of like fluffy organic material that comes from the breakdown of the mud and dead leaves and branches and everything, and we call that detritus. And that's usually what these bugs are eating. Some of them, though, can filter algae out of the water as well. So it depends. Different aquatic animals eat different things, but a lot of these little bottom-dwelling things eat that detritus, which is mostly plant matter, but not like new plants. It's sort of the old plants.
I found a jelly kind of thing.
Come,
Where'd it go?
bring it. A jelly kind of thing we found. Let's show everybody. Yeah. It's going to be a little hard to see, I think. Can people see that jelly-looking thing there? Can you see it, really?
Yes.
Let's see if we can figure out what that is. It might be an egg mass. I don't actually know what it is. I'm going to try to...
Someone has asked how tadpoles overwinter.
Tadpoles overwinter. Well, a lot of animals actually overwinter down in the bottom of a pond like this, because what happens is all of that leaf litter and dead branches and stuff, as it decomposes, that actually creates a very little bit of heat, and that's a nice insulated, safe place for them. And then also when the surface of the pond freezes, although the water is very cold, that kind of insulates them from the crazy fluctuations in the weather. Some species of frogs and toads also hibernate under mud. So it really depends what kind of tadpole it is, I suppose. But a lot of these animals will overwinter right in a pond like this.
It has polka dots.
This one has polka dots. Oh, there, now that looks like an egg mass that we might, I don't know what kind, but it definitely looks like an egg mass. Can people see that? Did you hear what Claire says? It has polka dots. Can you tell that it has polka dots? It's probably an egg mass. I'm going to guess from a frog, but I have to admit, I'm no expert on egg masses. So if any of my Seatuck friends are out there and know whose egg mass that is, please tell us all. I need a time check, please, Elsa. Can you see that? I might try to put it on the white paper. 12:02, perfect. Just a couple more minutes. Can we try to catch a frog or another tadpole for me? Okay, you can sort of see what's inside there, maybe. What do you think? Can you see it?
Yep.
See how there's some little dots in there? So that's probably an egg mass from an amphibian, like a salamander, or maybe from a frog. But I'm not quite sure. I'm hoping we have some good experts out there that can help us. I think we're seeing some good answers about the overwintering question from our friends online.
We are, and Seatuck says about the egg mass that the dots are individual eggs, maybe a collection of spring peeper eggs.
Oh, spring peeper eggs. Spring peepers are those little tiny frogs with a really loud voice. And if you're ever in the springtime, of course, walking around near a pond, you might hear them. They make a ton of noise. And they're a great sort of sign that spring is here when you finally hear the peepers start to make noise. My assistants are trying to catch us a frog, but I don't think it's happening today. Always be careful walking around in boots. Time check, please. We want to make sure that we end up with some really exciting stuff to look at on land, plants and trees. And I think we're done with our pond exploration. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Alison Branco, and I'm glad you could be here.